What the fuck?
What's going on, guys? Big House Bike and Auto here, coming at you. I'm sick as a dog. I'm actually a little bit better today, but I've been sick for a few days now. And unfortunately, that postponed my plans to fix this car this weekend. I figured I'd still do the video on the car because I've been promising you guys I'd show you this car. It's been in the background of a few videos about a month ago, if not longer. I put up a little bit of a teaser on the community tab saying that I got the car. So might as well let the cat out of the bag. Talk about what it is, why I got it, how much I got it for, etc. And we will be able to start it up and drive it, but what it needs is an alternator. So this is a 2003 Cadillac Deville. Those engines weren't really corrected until 2004 with the head bolt design flaw, and even then they still had problems with the head gasket. This car had a new engine put in a little while ago. I got it from a friend of mine, and at the time I didn't know him that well. He starred in a video of mine a few videos ago. George, who is actually a subscriber of mine, we never knew each other, but we ended up finding out we had a lot of mutual friends. He was very close with my cousin growing up, and obviously he lives in the state as well. So we ended up linking up on Facebook Marketplace because he had seen my Saturn Aura for sale and his father was interested in it. And we were talking, working out a deal, and he said, well, I know you like big old GM cars. My dad has this Cadillac Deville. It needs an alternator. I've serviced it for years. He's had it for years, and I just don't feel like fixing it anymore. So we ended up working as part of the deal. I figured I'd make good content, and I haven't owned one of these in a while, mainly because I don't buy them unless I have the service history, and it's good service history, and there's been some type of remedy done to the engine. The North Star is a great engine when it's not having issues with the head gasket. And the last one I owned was owned by an old gentleman who hit a curb with it. I bought it for $500. Despite it needing some front end work, he had the paperwork from having the head gasket / head bolts repaired. And that car was a daily driver of mine for a long time without any issues at all. And I sold it for a huge profit. So this car here, George's father, or maybe who they bought it from, I don't quite remember, it had a new engine put in at some point. Now the car has about 208,000 miles on the body. Not sure about the engine. I've got all the paperwork. I've got the Carfax on it, but I got this car a few months ago, so I don't quite remember the dates. But for what I paid for it, essentially I was more than willing to take the risk. So I sold him Saturn, and basically I gave him a $500 credit toward the Saturn for this car. So essentially I paid $500 for it. And it runs and drives. Obviously the alternator is not charging the battery, but it was weird when I first got the car, and I may put those clips in this video. I was laughing at George because he had a 888 here, and the battery, he had it charged up a little bit, enough to run it and drive it up and down the truck. But the car died a few minutes after, and I said, okay, definitely needs an alternator. Well, just out of curiosity, like a week later, I put another battery in it, and the car fired right up, and the alternator was charging. All right, so I drove the car around for almost 30 minutes, and the voltage maintained at 14. Shut it off, came back. When I started the car, it was at 12. Charging light came on, dropped down to 11, said battery not charging. So I said, that's weird. Shut it off, turn it right back on. And now it's fine again. And I'm texting George saying, haha, like you gave me the DeVille for pretty much nothing and it didn't even need an alternator. Just light fun joking. Well, now I have to eat my own words because I was daily driving it for a few days and it was charging the battery. And then one day I go to work and I'm watching the voltage just drop. I go, you gotta be kidding me. It was actually Christmas Eve, if I remember correctly. And of course, it came out from work. It was even lower. I just barely made it home. I mean, it was at 6 volts by the time I pulled in here. And like the headlights weren't working, the dashboard wasn't lit up. Everything was shut off because the car was trying to stay running and not power all these accessories. And the weirdest thing, I pull in the driveway here, I park right here, put it in gear, put it in park, and all of a sudden the volts jump right back up to 14 and everything starts working again. So the alternator is obviously finicky. I have checked all the grounds. I checked all the connections to the alternator, cleaned them. Now it's known that these vehicles, because of where the oil fill cap is, a lot of times when the oil is changed, oil will spill onto the alternator, and that can obviously cause issues if it's a lot. So I cleaned the alternator with electronic part cleaner very thoroughly, about as thoroughly as I could without taking it out of the car. Now those of you who are not familiar with these cars might be saying, why don't you just change the damn alternator? How bad can it be? It's not terrible, but the alternator is way down there. There's two ways to get to it. Neither one is very easy, but again, it's definitely doable. It's just been a matter of time for me. Basically, you take the radiator out and the electric fans, and you have to try to really wiggle it out of here at the bottom. Or the other way is you drop the subframe a little bit, and it gives you a little more room to get it out. But it's tucked in there very well. It was even hard to get to it just to clean it with the parts cleaner. But the alternator has just been very finicky lately. Some days it'll charge, some days it won't. Again, I've checked all the connections from front to back. Everything to do with the charging system I've checked, cleaned, and tightened, and no luck. So it needs an alternator. It is true that these North Star engines have trouble with aftermarket alternators. As far as I know, this is still the original. When I looked at it, I didn't see any, Duralast or anything like that on it, and it definitely looks old. Original, at least to this engine, whenever it was put in. I don't know if it was a brand new engine from GM or if it came out of a junkyard car. I don't know anything about it. I forget it. It's all on paper somewhere. But yeah, you need to go with a AC Delco alternator with these. There's some special component of it that communicates with this car, because there's so many computerized aspects of these Cadillacs. And if you go with a remanufactured, a lot of the times they don't have that component. And it'll still charge the battery, but you'll get a low voltage light in the dash. I've heard of instances where it won't even charge it at all. It just won't work, or they'll burn out real quickly. So I got to go with an AC Delco alternator. Now, if you think there is anything I might have missed or not tried yet, or any particular connection, if you're someone who's worked on these cars a million times, and you really know what you're talking about. Like there was a few of you like that with the Dodge Dynasty who had done a million of those input-output sensors and assured me that had to be the problem. If you think there's something that I am absolutely missing, please feel free to let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear it. But again, I did check and tighten at least what I thought was all the connections. Perhaps I missed some. Cleaned everything, cleaned the alternator. A lot of oil did drip out of it with the parts cleaner, obviously. And George told me that his father had just had the oil changed right before this started happening. And you could see a lot of it had dripped down here. Obviously, the idiot kids at Jiffy Lube didn't do it correctly. They spilled it everywhere. But if you think there's something I'm forgetting to do before I go crazy pulling this alternator out, please let me know. Otherwise, it's coming out. Going to put a brand new one in there, but again, I'd hate to do that and find it still does the same thing because I missed a connection somewhere or something. It's got good tires on it. This is the DHS, which is a little more loaded up than a DTS, a DeVille touring sedan. It has things, I used to have a DTS, this is a DHS. It has things like these little rear window screens, just like my S600. And just like the S600, you pull them up manually. And it also has the rear window screen, which is electric. Loaded up car. These DeVilles were always very loaded. This one's got the Landau top, whatever you want to call it, Brome, presidential. It's got the padded roof. It's in great condition. George's father has garaged this car as long as he's had it. And the only real negative on the body of this car, especially with the high mileage, it's otherwise in great shape. It's got some New England rust back here. This is a very common rot area for the DeVille, and the other side might have it as well. I don't quite remember. Oh no, this side's good. Oh, that's nice to know. I totally forgot. But this car for me, especially with the high mileage and the bad rep these cars get, they're very hard to sell. You know, back in the day when I sold my last one, they were still pretty new back then, so there wasn't as many complaints or people knowing about the head gasket problems. I sold that car for like $3,000 something, and it was running perfectly. Remember, the head gasket had already been done. One of the reasons I got so much money for it. This one went 208,000 miles, and while it does have a good Carfax, a little bit of rust, I'll probably just keep it. That was at least the plan when I did the deal with George. Make this like a daily driver for me, like a winter beater. We'll start it up. I haven't started in weeks, so see how she does. But I'm expecting the alternator will not be charging, so I'm not going to run it long. I actually just wanted to start it so I can move it over here. All right, so in the cockpit here, you can see the rear shade button. I got home link. Everything works. It does have a crack in the windshield, but it is still inspected, so I don't have to worry about that for a little while. Here we go. You can see I got those original Caddy keys and keyless entry. It's always nice when the cars still have that. Memory seats. I'm going, why the hell won't it start? This is my Escalade key. And this is an old key fob I have from an Oldsmobile that I put in the Escalade key. It doesn't even work. It's just I don't lose it because I broke my key fob for the Escalade, and I didn't want it to have no keychain. I wanted to have it some big ugly keychains. I put a GM fob on it. This isn't the right key. Let me get the correct key. Well, I can't even find the main key, but I found the valet one. This is the problem when you have so many cars. I always misplace the keys. Thank God I have doubles for most. All right, here we go. So we did this the last time I started after sitting for a few weeks. It ran a little rough for a minute and then cleared itself right up. Here's that charging warning right away. Battery not charging. Sometimes it goes away if you rev the engine. Let's just try to get the voltage up here first. I haven't been in this car in so long I totally forget the hell I'm doing. There we go. So we're at 11.8 right now. Let's see if revving the engine helps at all. Not today, so the alternator's still being quirky on me, but the battery's pretty charged up, so we've got a minute here. So you can see no dash warning lights besides that one. Oh, you can see what I mean? When I rev the engine, it'll make it go away. Climate control works, radio works. Car is recent AC, a bunch of work done to it. All the power windows work. So for 500 bucks, I'm happy. This one's also had the transmission solenoid changed by George himself. He said it was a pain in the neck, but he did it without dropping the trans. That's a common issue with these DeVilles. The trans solenoid goes and people think it has a bad transmission when it's just like a $3 solenoid. So again, I'm not going to go too far here. Matter of fact, I'm going to stay right in my neighborhood because I'm not sure how long this thing will keep charging for. I hate to take it out with all this salt, but again, it is going to be a winter beater, I suppose. And you can see the voltage light just shut off, but we're obviously not charging the battery because it should be at least 13.5 volts. And it's staying at 11.8, but it's done this before, and then like 5 minutes later it'll start charging. So I'm kind of curious. That's why I'm taking it out for a drive and see how it behaves today. Last few times I tried to drive it, it just started steady dropping as soon as I put the battery in the car. But she drives real nice. It could use new shocks. You can feel in the rear in particular. The front struts feel fine. Those rear air leveling shocks feel like they're blown. George said you hear the compressor running from time to time when it shouldn't be. So that's a good indicator that it needs new rear air shocks, which are not that bad on these cars. It's not like the old school Lincolns where the air suspension went and the car was a total loss, or like a Land Rover. But for me to drive it as a winter beater, it's perfect. All you do is change this alternator out. George, buddy, I know you're watching this video and you've been saying you're gonna come over here and help me do it, and I'm still waiting. You can see it's actually stayed at 11.8, which again is not adequate voltage. It's certainly not gonna leave it on the side of the road, but it should be at least 13.5. I don't really need this on. So that's the DeVille. You can see she drives and does everything she should do, at least when the battery's charged. And I guess what else can I say about it? See how it is a digital dash. It just has the look of analog gauges, but if you look, you can see it projects. And check this out. I can even put a little speedometer up there. There goes the voltage light again. I don't give a shit. Check this out. And there it goes. It went away. Isn't that cool, the digital dash? I like that a lot. So I'm going to drive this around for a few minutes. I doubt you want to watch me just drive in circles, but I just want to see how the alternator behaves here. The fact that it's staying at 11.8 tells me it's charging it at least somewhat, because by now the voltage should have dropped. This car obviously does a lot of draining in the battery. There's a lot of systems it has to run. I'm going to keep an eye on the alternator, and I'll get back with you guys shortly. Check gas cap. Let's go check. So I just got back to the house, drove it around for a few minutes, still at 11.8, but you can see when I park it, the voltage light comes back on. I'm really curious to know what you guys think. Do you think it's actually a bad alternator? I don't think I've ever put gas in this car. I think when George sold it to me, it had a full tank, pretty close to it. I don't even remember mine having this. It's been a number of years. What do you do now? You just push it in? The bloody hell, George. Is this why you sold me the car? All right, this time it opened. Gas cap seems fine to me. Of course, it could obviously need to be replaced. The little gasket goes bad and stuff. Yeah, you know, it's so strange. Like you can see, it's still 11.8. It obviously hasn't started to drain the battery. It's been at least 10 minutes now. But it's done that before, and then as you start going along, all of a sudden it starts to do the steady decline. So it doesn't mean you can really trust the car. You hear how smooth that engine runs now that it's warmed up. Again, that's only when it sits for a while. When I was driving every single day, it would always start up nice and strong, never have a little misfire or anything like that. Could be a vacuum leak, could be, I know the valve covers are leaking, it could be leaking into the spark plugs or something, and it has to burn it off for a few seconds to start the engine. George just put very recently a water pump in this, a bunch of other work, and that was just kind of the thing. You know, it's a high mileage, older Cadillac. It's starting to need a lot more repairs, and his father is an older guy, and he just needs something more reliable. So for me, I don't care. I don't mind wrenching on something like this. I have plenty of other cars if it does not work for me, you know, from time to time. But George's father did not. So now he's got the Saturn, which is newer and more reliable and much more simple eco-tech in that. Let me know what you think in the comments, especially about the alternator issue. Let me know if you think that's actually a bad alternator or it's got to be a bad connection or something. By the way, I don't think it's the battery, because I tried 2 different batteries in this car. Same result. Obviously, when George brought it to me that day, the battery was pretty dead from being started and stopped with this issue. But I have a big heavy-duty charger, and I charged it right up, and it started the car right up with no issues. You even saw it today. It's been sitting out here for weeks. So I don't think it's the battery. I tested the battery at my tester too, and the battery came back good. So and it is the correct battery, before anybody says you have the wrong battery. And it's the battery made for this car. There it is. It's got the vent tubes on it. It's got like 1,000 something cranking amps or whatever it's supposed to have. That's the right one. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, guys. Sorry about my voice. I hope it didn't disgust you or anything. I'm doing my best here. But I want to keep the content coming for you. Let me know what you think, and keep an eye out for more content. Thanks for watching. Mine again.